That is too bright. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the day you've all been waiting for. My dad is finally gonna answer your questions of players from the past versus players from the present. Yeah, I just woke up and edited the video. I'm basically not in this at all. Like, I'm doing the intro, I'm doing the outro, but the entire video is my dad. Now, understand, he's not used to recording, he's not used to being here, he's not used to talking into a camera, so certain areas of the video he is going to be quieter. I did my best to try and turn it up, but I think I did a pretty good job, and I think he did a very good job as well. So before we get into the video, super quick, we got a couple of quick plugs. One, head over to gfuel.com, use code WyattzWorld, save yourself a discount on any G Fuel products. Two, if you're 18 years or older, you can head over to Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app, where code WyattzWorld will match up to $100 of your first deposit. And three, if you want to get your parents some cool, unique, affordable gifts for this holiday season, head over to parentpresents.com. It's the link in my bio for the ultimate Christmas guide. All right, I'm done talking. Dad, they're all yours.
Hello, everybody from out in WyattzWorld. Wyatt asked me if I would be good enough to come in and do some now versus then with players. I'm more than happy to do it. I do have a disclaimer, though. Only my opinion, so don't beat me up too bad on it. And remember, opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one. Keep that in mind. It's difficult. I want to say it's difficult to do this because things have changed so much. When I was a kid in the 70s, the players weren't as big, and they certainly weren't as fast. I tried to think if there was a 300-pounder in the NFL in the 70s, and maybe Dave Butts, who was with Washington. I used to think Curly Culp was that big, but in actuality, he wasn't. So you didn't really have any 300-pounders. And then as far as speed demons, Cliff Branch maybe with Oakland, or Willie Gault, I think was with Chicago. So there wasn't the speed, and then the game plans changed. Back in the 70s, we were running the ball all the time. Even into the 80s, run was primary. Teams had a primary running back. Fran Tarkenton back in the mid-70s took the all-time lead with 47,000 yards, and he only averaged 191 yards a game. Tom Brady now, if you take his yardage and divide it by the number of games, he's over 300. So the game has changed a lot. So to compare a receiver now when they're throwing the ball all over the place, back then is difficult. So keep that in mind. I started with the tougher ones. Sports Gamer had Joe Montana versus Tom Brady. This is a real tough one for me. I know that I did the video before and we talked about Joe Montana. I think he was the best. But, you look at Tom Brady's statistics, he's obviously more than double probably on yardage and touchdowns. But again, the game has changed. They're both great quarterbacks. They're both decent people. They seem humble. I think Brady, 6 or 7 Super Bowls, and Joe Montana 4. But if it was my choice in their prime, I would still take Joe Montana. No disrespect to all the Brady lovers. He is probably the greatest of all time, but I would take Joe Montana. The guy was phenomenal. He was clutch. He was a great quarterback, and there's just no two ways about it. The next one comes from Titans, and I'm squinting a little bit because I don't want to put my reading glasses on and look like an entire goof. Titans Insider, Earl Campbell versus Derrick Henry, and I picked this one out. A lot of people were going against, putting someone against Derrick Henry, but the two of them are very comparable. If you compare their statistics, and I know, Derrick Henry hasn't played as long, I don't think, as Earl Campbell had, but their statistics are very close. The thing I like about the comparison is they are the same type of runners. They'd rather run right through somebody than around them, and classic runs for both of them. They're power backs. They got all you want when you want to talk about trying to pound the ball against somebody. And if you've never seen it, go to YouTube and YouTube Earl Campbell the run. I don't know if that'll bring it up or not, but he's running against the LA Rams if you have the right video. And it is, to this day, my favorite run, because he runs right over Isaiah Robertson, who is a great linebacker, runs right over him and proceeds to run down the field and basically has his jersey torn right off him. It's classic. It's Earl Campbell. I'm not trying to be hard on Derrick Henry here because he's a great back, but I'll take Earl Campbell because the man had heart. Great running back. Next one, Seabass. Tony Gonzalez against Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce, probably a premier tight end right now in the league. And I know the urge is, hey, go with somebody that's here right now, but Gonzalez has probably twice. I think he's the leading tight end of all time. He's got twice the yardage at least that Kelce has, and probably touchdowns too. Tight end with 15,000 yards. It's hard to pass him up. And in their prime, I would take Tony Gonzalez. Brody Bristol. Hope I pronounced that. I'm going to butcher some names here, but Micah Parson versus Lawrence Taylor. I love both of them. Micah Parson, I said, was one person I could take from another team. I'd still be that person. He wrecked the Vikings here a couple weeks ago single-handedly. Great linebacker, but he just doesn't have enough time in for me to take him. Now, Lawrence Taylor was everything. You had to game plan against him. You did it, and he still beat you. I mean, the guy was incredible. 130, 140 sacks in his career, and he was a game breaker. I'll take Lawrence Taylor any day of the week. We'll do the next one. From Tornado, Joe Green versus Aaron Donald. This is a hard one for me. Steel Curtain was, back in the time, the ultimate defense. I still think it's in the top 3 if it isn't the #1 defense. Joe Green was at the center of it. You had Ernie Holmes, you had L.C. Greenwood, White, Jack Ham, Donnie Shell, Mel Blount. So you had so many great players on there, you probably didn't get as many sacks or tackles as you might have otherwise done. Look at Aaron Donald on the Rams. The defense is not stellar, and he still wreaks havoc. I'm sure he's outsacked Joe Green by now. If I had to take the choice of the two, I would take Aaron Donald because he just is a game wrecker, but I have tons of respect for Joe Green. Thomas Brown, Adam Vinatieri versus Justin Tucker. Not a real tough choice here. I think that Vinatieri being the leading scorer would be the obvious choice, but it's hard to take a kicker, not take a kicker that's hitting over 90%, can kick them from 60+ yards, and is extremely accurate, and as accurate as Tucker's been. He would be my choice. I think he's the greatest kicker of all time without going any further in his career. Danny submitted Bill Walsh or Bill Belichick. Again, go back to my other video. I love Bill Walsh. Bill Walsh, Joe Gibbs, and Don Coryell are responsible for the West Coast offense. It's attached to Bill Walsh. Transition from run to pass. And Bill Walsh is right at the center of it. He won 3 Super Bowls. There was a 4th, and I still credit him for it because George Seifert took over a team that was loaded. It was Walsh's team. But, and Bill Belichick, 6 Super Bowls, came in there and took New England from not being very successful, being extremely successful. He's a great coach. He game plans against, to shut out one person. I always hear about that. But, I mean, it's amazing. I go back to the game in Buffalo, I think, where they passed twice and ran the rest last year and beat Buffalo. I mean, the guy is a genius, but he's an old crab, especially during his interviews. It's uncomfortable even watching him. So if I got my choice, I'm taking Bill just because he's kindly old Bill and because he knew football and he knew players. Now, these other ones are not so tough. Barry Sanders versus Saquon Barkley. I just took that one. There's a lot of comparisons with Barry Sanders. No matter who you put against Barry Sanders, I'm going to tell you I'd take him any day. 10 years before he retired in his prime, averaged 1,500 yards a year. I think he had a year even where he was injured for part of the year, still was over 1,000 yards. The guy was an all-pro every year. Nobody can compete with that. The guy was just an absolute nightmare to play against. I hated it. And the Vikings played him twice a year, and he took it to us. LA Boy, Roger Staubach versus Dak. Staubach, classic. Probably didn't have, again, a lot of yards, 25,000, whatever it was, for his career. A couple of Super Bowls, but a class act. And as far as Dak, well, as far as I'm concerned, the jury's still out on him. He's injured too much, a little bit of a prima donna. I just don't think he's that good a quarterback, to be quite honest with you. I'm glad Dallas is hanging their star on him because I think it's going to cost him. Amru Khan, Darrelle Revis versus Deion Sanders. Darrelle Revis was a blanket. He could cover anybody and cover him effectively. But Deion Sanders is the ultimate. Raw speed, can cover. People say he didn't like to tackle, but he could tackle too. All around game-stopping corner. I mean, he made all kinds of plays, and people don't, you may not realize this, but he played receiver a lot of the time. And besides that, he played baseball, and I think he was a 250, 260 hitter when he played baseball. The guy did it all. The random editor, Patrick Mahomes versus Joe Montana. I already told you about Montana. Mahomes, great quarterback, but win a couple more, 2-3 more Super Bowls, and we'll talk about it. Sad Steelers fan. Don't be too sad. I mean, you guys won enough championships. Brett Favre versus Aaron Rodgers. Kind of like that one, actually. It's tough. I really don't care too much for Aaron Rodgers, and you probably know that. And I didn't care too much for Brett Favre until he became a Viking. But if I compared the two, I'm going to take Favre any day. Favre will go out there and put it on the line for you, and he's not going to blame anybody else if the game was bad. I don't remember him ever blaming people. The minute that the prima donna's out there and things go wrong, it's because his receivers are screwing up, or his thumb is hurt, or his offensive linemen aren't in there. I hope Green Bay is happy for the $50 million worth of investment you've got into that creep, because it's costing you and it's going to drag you down. If I was you, I'd get rid of him like yesterday's garbage and move forward. Alex Ladius, I probably got that wrong, but it's Ray Lewis and Bobby Wagner. I'll take Ray Lewis. Lewis probably has some better stats. Ray Lewis played mean. He's the closest thing to mean that you can come to Dick Butkus as possible. Butkus was really mean. Reflug TV, Mike Vick versus Lamar Jackson. I like Lamar Jackson. Take him. Falcon Films, Julio Jones versus Calvin Johnson. Falcon, meaning you probably like Julio Jones, and rightfully so, great receiver, but I'll take Calvin Johnson any day. Joey Parla, Brian Urlacher versus Luke Kuechly. I'll take Urlacher because we had to play him regularly. He was a pain in the rear end to play. I hated it. Made the Bears what they were on defense, really. Cash today. Stephon Diggs against Andre Reed. Hard for me to turn down Andre Reed because he was Jim Kelly's go-all. That's the guy he went to all the time. Great player for all those years that Buffalo was in the Super Bowls and had the years. But if I had the two of them, I'd have to take Diggsy. Speed demon, got the hands, make the catch, got the attitude. Seems to be more of a team player now that he's in that environment than he was in Minnesota. Paul's 3 King. Paul Krause versus Harrison Smith. Not probably many people know who Paul Krause is. He was a Minnesota Viking. He's the all-time leader in interceptions. It's the one record that probably will never be broken. Harrison Smith has 30 interceptions. They both were number 22, incidentally, which is kind of odd. But I'll take Harrison Smith. No offense to Paul Krause, but Harrison Smith hits like a ton of bricks. Back in the days when Krause was playing, they used to lay down in front of the receiver to stop him. There wasn't so much tackling. Mr. Nobody had a question, dynasty question. 72 Finns versus 85 Bears. This is an easy one for me. I watched the Dolphins. They were a running team, had a great line. They had Greasy back there, but they had, I think, Jim Kick, I think Mercury Morris, and Larry Sonka. And they would pound the ball. Well, you are not going to pound the ball at the 85 Chicago Bears. Bob Greasy would be just that, a greasy spot in the turf. Sounds disrespectful, but it's just honest. Times have changed, and there is no comparison between. I do not think that the Dolphins would score a point on the Bears. Now, the Bears would not score much on the Dolphins either. The Dolphins had I think they were called the no-name defense at the time, but the Bears had sweetness, and he'd find enough to, it's probably be a boring game like 13-0, but the Bears would win it. Now I have some good humor ones here. Kind of pick these out because most of the time when I looked at them, I got a good chuckle out of them. Dakota Schmidt, Terry Bradshaw versus Kenny Pickett. It doesn't really give you any, much to work with there because Pickett hasn't played but 4 or 5 games or whatever, and Bradshaw played many years. But I'll tell you what, the way Josh Allen throws the ball now, that's the way Terry Bradshaw threw it back then. The man could throw the ball on a rope 50, 60 yards down the field. He had the weapons. He's a winner, and they won 4 Super Bowls. I'll take Terry any day. Kenny Pickett probably be okay, but he needs time, of course. Clay G sends me Peyton Manning versus Russell Wilson. Another good one because Peyton Manning, who's probably got double the yardage at least that Wilson does, somewhere around there. Probably got double the touchdowns too, who was a very decent, humble guy. And Russell is too, but he went over to Denver, right? And has fallen flat on his face. And I hope Denver is happy. They're like Green Bay. They're paying this guy $49 million a year and getting what they're getting now. Maybe it's the coach, probably Hackett. He came out of Green Bay, so what do you expect? Purple Creature. Now, I actually had to look up statistics on this because I know both the names and it's kind of funny. Joey Harrington versus Christian Ponder. Now, there's a couple of dandies. Harrington had, this one I got written down, 14,000 yards, 79 touchdowns, and 85 interceptions. More interceptions than touchdowns, kind of Joe Namath-like. And then Christian Ponder had 6,600 yards, 38 touchdowns, and 36 interceptions. One was a Viking, the other was a Lion. And so as far as who I take out of those two, I'm going to punt. The next one is That Boy Dougie, P. Joe Namath versus Zach Wilson. I picked this one because I just have a bone to pick with Joe Namath. The man's got 50 more interceptions than he does touchdowns, and he's in the Hall of Fame. Yep, they won a Super Bowl, but that doesn't make you in the Hall of Fame. There's a lot of players that won a Super Bowl and aren't in the Hall of Fame. And Namath is because he was a quarterback. So he had one game, in his career, and he makes it to the Hall of Fame on that. Or Zach Wilson. My choice is Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson, I think if you look at his interception versus touchdown ratio, and you extend it out to the number of touchdown passes that Joe Namath had, you'll see that they're comparable. So when Zach Wilson gets to where Joe Namath was, they'll have about the same number of interceptions to touchdown. If you're happy with that, Zach Wilson is your man, New York. I'd take him. And this one, I like the name. Archduke Franz Ferdinand. I don't know if the guy that uses his handle knows who he is. Probably does. But he actually was Duke of Romania or Hungary. And he was assassinated. A little history lesson for you guys here. Along with his wife. And that ended up starting World War I. Here's his question. Who is worse, Gary Anderson or Blair Walsh? Well, that'll start a war. Gary Anderson is definitely the better player because he's top 3, 4 in scoring. Of course, he missed the one field goal that would have finally got us into the Super Bowl back in '98. Blair Walsh missed about a 21-yard chip shot against the Seahawks that would have got us in. I'll take Gary Anderson, the lesser of two evils. And the final one I got here is from Dino DiMarino. Who is the best passer, Walter Payton or Mitchell Trubisky? I'll take Sweetness any day. That's a good one. I really appreciate all the questions, and I'm sorry that I couldn't get to all of them. There's just so many. I read through them all, and I missed a few, and I'm going to go back through and look at them. I look at the comments, and I kind of enjoy reading through them, and it's kind of fun being here in WyattzWorld studio to do this for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I will give you a little bonus, though. My upset pick of the week, and it doesn't involve the Packers, right? Cincinnati is going to go ahead and stomp Kansas City 27-24. Take it to the bank. See you guys next time.
Alright guys, that is going to be all for today's video, and one last time, Dad, because I'm sure you're watching this, thank you so much. You did such a good job, and I hope everybody enjoyed the video with you. If you guys want to see him come back, please let me know in the comments, and we'll work on that for the future. Anyway, with everything I just said, though, I'm going to hop off and get this edited so you guys can watch it on time and get a kickstart to your weekend. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your Friday, and as always, I will see you in the next video.